Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditsies. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Guys, Miss Liz back in the house today, and I have Evan Kidwell in the house. And we're going to be talking about his book, and we're going to bring it up. We're going to have a little trailer. Miss Liz is going to do a little something different tonight with Evan that I don't do often, because I don't often get a little mini trailer for the book. So we're going to share that with all of you listeners out there. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to all those platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of those good platforms. And the ones that I don't mention, check those ones out too. Miss Liz is all over the place. Check out the podcast apps, Spotify, Podbean, Listen Notes, all those good platforms. And the ones I don't mention, check those ones out too. But also check out babyboomers.org, because Miss Liz is partnered up with them. They are part of a partnership with Miss Liz. And you can also find amazing other podcasts out there. I am big on supporting and sharing other people as well, not just Miss Liz. So let's get started with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro, and then we're going to get Evan in here and we're going to spill his tea. And his tea is to equip people on how to be resilient, to overcome any obstacle in one's way. That is the tea we are serving tonight. And then we have some resilience, 3 beautiful kids, and happily married 10 years. We're going to get into a lot of good stuff on Tea Time tonight. So let's get the disclaimer and intro, and let's get Evan in here and let's spill some tea together. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real-life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart. And if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness 1 cup at a time. Now let me get Evans. Welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where stories remind us that even in the toughest moments, we have the power to rise, redefine, and rewrite our paths. Today's guest brings us a story that blends imagination with real-life resilience, proving that sometimes the world we create are born from the challenges we've lived. Please join me in welcoming Evan Kidwell, Amazon bestselling young adult fantasy author of Timorous, Spark, and The Luck Curse. Evan's journey began long before the book. Growing up, he turned to fantasy as a way to navigate childhood bullying, finding strength in stories where courage, identity, and resilience shaped the outcome. Those early experiences became the foundation for the world of Matantias. I'm going to get him to say it because I don't want to mispronounce it. A place where teens face brutal trial where power determines status and where survival forces you to discover who you really are. But what makes Evan's story even more powerful is that he didn't just dream it, he committed to it. After publicly declaring he would write and publish a book within a year, he followed through, turning vision into reality while balancing life as a husband, father of 3, and working professional. His tea speaks clearly, equipping others with resilience to overcome any obstacle. And his story stands on resilience, family, and commitment. So grab your cup and lean in. Today's tea time is about courage, creativity, and what it takes to keep going, even when the odds feel stacked against you. Let me get Evan in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Evan.
Hi.
Now I need some saving. What is that word? I cannot pronounce it.
Methantis.
Methantis. I wasn't even close.
It's okay. It's not a problem at all.
Well, Evan, we're going to be talking about your book and we're going to talk about your tea tonight. But before we get started, I thought we would surprise the listeners with the thriller, the tease, and then you can tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll pop the book up later on where people can see the cover and all that good stuff. But let's listen to the teaser first.
Sounds great.
Let me get that there, and let me just push this button over here.
In the world of Methantis, destiny whispered, and shadows lurked in the halls of Mythica High. Meet Timaeus, a boy with a secret power he barely understands, in a society where every magic must be controlled, every fate is predetermined. Bound by the rigid rules of an ancient hierarchy, Timaeus stands at a crossroads. Should he accept the path laid out for him, or dare to challenge the norms and change his destiny? The trials, a cruel test to draw out their powers, not to better them, but to fit them into the rigid hierarchy. Will these trials break them or make them stronger? With only his wit, untested powers, and the bonds of deep friendship, Timaeus confronts the trials that threaten the safety of him and his friends.
Can a whisper of destiny fight against the echo of fate?
Order Timaeus spark and the luck curse today. Discover the power of resilience, the strength of friendship, and the courage it takes to change one's stars. Are you ready to challenge destiny?
And there we got it. Now let's talk about this incredible adventure. I love when I get something different to do with tea time, because then the listeners are like, what is she doing tonight?
That's awesome.
So Evan, before we get into that teaser and tell us a little bit about it, I want to get to know you a little bit, and I want my listeners to get to know you a little bit. So who was Evan as a little guy, and who is Evan now?
Yeah, so Evan as a little guy was not confident. I was always the smallest kid in every class. And when I say I was the smallest kid, I was born premature. So I'm a miracle baby. I was born at a time when the medical advances weren't what they are now. I was born at 2 pounds. And so that size stayed with me all through elementary and junior high and high school. And so I just found myself on the opposite end of getting bullied almost daily. And so I found myself trying to figure out how to escape from that. I wasn't big enough. I wasn't strong enough, right? Like all of that kind of fun stuff. So I would create these imaginative stories for myself to interact with these characters that wouldn't bully me, right? Like, they'd go through their own hardships and stuff. And so I didn't realize until an adult that was my coping mechanism for everything. But as an author myself, I've actually been able to revisit some of those same characters that I created as a kid and pull them into my stories today. But yeah, it was, it's funny because as I grew and as I progressed, the bullying just changed. Who was bullying me, how they were bullying me, that all just kept changing. But it was a constant throughout my life. And so I really had to develop resilience as a kid. And as a kid, I probably didn't really know what that even meant. I just knew that, I just kept getting back up, and I've always had a good attitude about things, even when, well, for lack of a better term, things sucked, right? So, and growing up as an adult, the biggest thing that I would say is, as an author, I wanted to equip readers to not just learn or identify with things like resilience, but how do they actually implement things like resilience into their everyday lives. So yeah, I am happily married now, for 10 years now, and I have 3 beautiful children. We live up in the Pacific Northwest now, but yeah, it has been a journey getting here, right? It's not like I just arrived to this point in time. So even my marriage, there was a point in time where, because of how much bullying and trauma I dealt with as a kid, I genuinely had this story in my head that I wasn't ever good enough for something like marriage, right? And so learning for myself personally that I was good enough, and and kind of coming to terms with that, I wouldn't have certainly intrigued my wife, I guess, best sale of my life, right? enough if I hadn't come to terms with, I am good enough, I don't need to change myself, those kinds of things. So, those are that's the progression from childhood all the way to adulthood. So.
Evan, I've never heard that. Best sale of my life for a wife.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I definitely married up, right?
And and this is what we do, right? As writers and authors, we use our pain and bring it to a purpose, bring it into things that bring understanding of why we went through what we went through. And I got that through the teaser, was like, oh, this is where the characters are coming from. The characters are coming from you overcoming that. And we don't talk about bullying enough. I think we should talk about it more as adults, because I find that adults are bullying more than the children are.
It's so true. I think that not only adults, but for whatever reason, adults are bigger bullies than even kids these days. And we see it in every facet. I've seen it in my professional industry. I've seen it in the government. I've seen it it comes down to a version of control. And I don't understand why it's so prevalent today, but I do recognize it when I see it because of my lifelong history of it. So I try to call it out when I see it and point it out and say, that's not okay. And, I'm not always the best at that, but when I notice it, I definitely call attention to it, whether it's identifying it with kids. I was dealing with a scenario with my son, who's 7, the other day. And I straight up told the other kid, I was like, you know what, you're being a bully, right? Like, that's not nice, right? So,
yeah.
So, we
got to call them out on it, right?
Right. So, so it's, I try to call it out when I see it, and maybe that's appropriate, maybe it's not, but I dealt with it my whole life. And so I'm very sensitive to it when it happens. But yeah, adults can be bigger bullies sometimes than even kids. And it's not necessary. You don't need it.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't need it. There's so much things in the world going on that we don't need extra bullying going on. Especially in the screens, like the virtual world. I don't know your age, but my age, we got away with a lot of stuff before the internet came around. So we didn't have it all on there, right? But internet came around, and it was like everybody became like this hidden bully behind a screen. Like they found that it was easy to attack. They could say whatever they wanted. They put whatever they wanted on their platforms. Freedom of speech. Oh, freedom of speech doesn't give you freedom of being a bully.
Right. I mean, people might think of it that way. I think the big reason bullying is so prevalent online specifically is because they have something to hide behind. It's no longer like an identifiable, getting pushed into the trash can kind of scenario. Now it's just cyberbullying, which is even worse, right? In many, many ways. We see documentaries nowadays about that kind of stuff happening and people feeding into it as a version of attention. And I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's appropriate. There's lots of ways to get attention, and that's not it. Right. So that's definitely, a struggle with, I have young kids, right? So it's a struggle I have where it's like, I don't want you on social media because how traumatizing that can be. I was watching a documentary the other day, and it was a Netflix documentary. And it was one where this nasty bully was happening and taking place, and cyberbullying, and it turned out to be the mom, and it was her way of connecting with the daughter, and it made no sense.
Oh yes, I've seen that one.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that was a weird one. I watched that one. I was just like, how desperate do you need to be for attention that you have to bully your own child?
Right.
Yeah, that
That
one was
makes
a
no sense.
crazy one. We Well, we have some questions coming in, Evan, that I want to get
Yeah.
out to you about the book and all of that. And people that joined right at the beginning, you got to see the amazing teaser. But if you didn't, well, you got to watch Teatime right from the beginning. And then we're going to pull up the book later on. But we have a question here for you, Evan, and it is an amazing topic. How did Evan turn bullying into such a powerful storytelling?
Yeah, I think, again, growing up as a kid, I used it as my refuge. And, people joke around and you'll see things on TV like imaginary friends. That's effectively what I had, right? I just didn't know it at the time. But I would create these characters and I remember, I remember those stories back from a kid, and I would create these interactive adventures with these friends. And I think the big path out for me was actually a friend. So one of my best friends to this day, his name's Zach. And I remember he came into the school in third grade. This was at a time when I had no friends. And I'm pretty sure I was probably overly annoying to this kid because, as soon as he came into the school, he was homeschooled until third grade. Then he came into school and he's the new kid. He doesn't know I have this history. He doesn't know that I'm the kid nobody wants to hang out with, right? So I latched myself onto him kind of like a leech would be my, my analogy. And he showed me so much grace during that period of my life. And I remember he was really the reason I was able to kind of get myself pulled out of that world of bullying, was just one friend. And so one of the things I tried to do in my storytelling was actually build that same environment of a friendship group, because friends can bring you out of that. It is a downward cycle, depressing cycle of always never feeling good enough, never feeling like you're it, right? Always getting picked last. It is awful. It is not a fun feeling, and it's very depressing. And so one friend can pull you out, and you can be that friend to other people if you notice they're going through it. So not only did I bring those stories through, but I also really wanted to make it clear that friendships and the relationships that we pick can be what actually accelerates us out of a downward spiral like that.
So, Evan, we have a question here about how did you get through the tough times?
Yeah. So I'd like to say that it was just my internal innate ability to be resilient, except I don't think that's entirely true. That I actually had to go through counseling a bunch as a kid. I went through early divorce with my parents as a young kid. So it was divorce and bullying and never feeling good enough. And it was, I remember there was a point in time where one of the kids that was a bully of mine literally hit me on the head in class. We were in acting class with a 2x4, right? Like just for no reason, right? And so I ended up really, I didn't even think that I needed it, was counseling. So I went through counseling as a kid, and then actually as an adult, I didn't realize until even recently that I was still dealing with some of that childhood trauma. I had buried it, so it wasn't prevalent much in my life, except in the moments where I would get I would get triggered. I would get triggered by these moments, and when I went through counseling as an adult, my therapist actually said, you're actually using your defense mechanisms you used when you were a kid. That's what you're doing here. When you get triggered that way, when you feel those things, you're using the defense mechanisms you learned as a kid. And I want to help retrain you to not have to rely on those defense mechanisms anymore, because you're an adult now. You're not a kid anymore. You don't need to do that anymore. And it took like 8 months of just every week going to therapy a couple times a week to get through that. And it's a little discouraging when I initially think about it, because nobody wants to think that they need therapy. But every one of us has trauma that we have learned to live with, or learn how to deal with trauma during our lifetime. And the question becomes, how do you move through that trauma? How do you move past it? And so if I hadn't have gone through counseling for a good 8 months and really figured out the core of like why I was getting triggered by these things, I probably would have said, "Oh, I just like to be resilient." But that's a fake answer. It's just not real. So
now that you've done the counseling, you know it's okay. That's not a real answer. Well, Erin, we have 2 questions from 2 different listeners that are coming in, but it's similar to the question. So I'm going to pull up so that they can see that I can see their comments. From Steph, Into the Valley, how did you build, pronounce it because I can't pronounce it.
Mithantis, yeah.
Mithantis.
So Mithantis is a parallel world to our world. So there's a lot of similarities to it. So how do you, same question, how did you come up with
That's
it?
why I said I'm gonna just pull them up so that they both see that I did see their comments. So
I actually got, so first of all, I had a dream about a flawed society hierarchy system that exists. That is the premise of my book. Okay. And the flawed system that exists is basically mythical beings of old actually gave humans powers. And humans actually transferred those powers over time genetically, okay? The hierarchy exists in my book, but I actually got the idea from my daughter. She's 4 now, and she has blue eyes. And I know that this sounds simple, but she has blue eyes. Both my wife and I have very brown eyes. Nobody in our family has blue eyes. I think she said my great aunt had blue eyes at one point in time. I was like,
you know what I always said to my kids? My grandpa used to say, only the ones with the brown eyes are my grandkids. The ones that have blue eyes are not. And then my grandma said, you know what? A lot of them have brown eyes, but then they turn into blue eyes because of their attitudes.
There you go. So I kind of had that thought process. If mythical beings of old actually gave powers to humans and then they passed them on genetically over time, that would allow those powers to continue on. But if they could pass powers along to people, why couldn't they pass powers along to objects, to places, to those kinds of things? So I actually created a very magical world with real humans like us. Most of the humans actually have powers. A handful of them don't. Those are called non-creatures in my book. And so that was kind of the progression. But I had the dream about the hierarchy and the flawed nature of it. And then after I woke up from my dream, I keep a dream journal. After I woke up from my dream, I did a dump of like the 30 seconds I could remember until I lost it. And then what prompted the actual writing of the book was that leadership conference, actually. So,
you know, building these characters and that, and you telling me that some of them had powers. So did the bullies have the powers, or did the people that weren't getting bullied have the powers?
Oh, both. But the system is a bully system. It's meant to keep people in their place. So which powers people unlock is not actually as important as where they land in that hierarchy system. It's a tyrannical bully system, and it's all about keeping control of its constituents, right? So I incorporated the bullying not only physically with my main character, Timaeus, was bullied constantly throughout the book, but not overdone, right? Just enough to make sure it was clear that that was a thing that was happening. But also the system is trying to maintain control through that. And so I incorporated that bullying aspect in a couple of different ways.
So Evan, we have a question here from Mark. Which character was the hardest to write?
Great question. So I think, and I think this is true from a like other authors probably experienced this as well. My main villain in my book was probably the hardest to write, but I didn't realize he was the hardest to write until after I had finished my first draft of my manuscript. And the reason why is because my main villain is a true psychopath. And like he doesn't experience emotions the same way as we do, right? And he's very black and white in his thought process. Like it's this way. That's all. That's how it works, right? And so I think at the end of the day, my editor was the one that actually addressed and identified this to me, and she said, you know, hey, what are his motivations, right? Like Yeah, he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's doing all these mean things. Yeah, where's his motivation? I said, and this is, I'm a new author, so just bear with me for a second. What I told her is I said, well, he doesn't really have any. He's a psychopath, right? And she said, no, he has motivations. He has a story that got him to where he's at. You need to add that. So if anyone reads my book, there are several scenes now from his perspective that actually show what kind of built him to be his philosophy, where he's at, how he sits and all that. But that came after my first manuscript was done, right? Because my editor was the one that identified, like, you need to make a relatable character, even though you're not a psychopath and you don't think like a psychopath. You have to put yourself in his shoes. Like, how would he think? What would shape him? That was hugely, hugely helpful. And so I think he was probably the hardest to write, only because in the first instance, I didn't even have that kind of backstory to him. I just had him doing his mean things, right? But I did have, I'll call it a success. I was at an event, promoting my book, and this guy, it was a 3-day event. This guy bought the book on Friday, and he used to be like a English teacher, I think, actually. And by Sunday, he came back up to my booth and he said, I've read your book within like 2 days. And he goes, I hated, his name is Professor Undermeyer. I hated Professor Undermeyer, like with every bone of my body. Good job. Okay, so I did it right. so that was,
he hated the name, but good job.
Yeah, well, he hated him because he was supposed to hate him. That was the mission, right? So, yeah.
Well, yeah, you want people to hate the bad guy. You don't want them loving the bad guy, because then there's something really wrong about the reader if they're loving the bad guy, right?
Unless you're talking about like a Breaking Bad, then you kind of with the bad guy the whole way, and then you're like, I do love him, right? So.
Well, we have a comment here for you, Evan. It says the idea of owning your story really hits deep. You say that quite often, owning your story. Why do you say that quite often?
Yeah, so I have dealt with I'm not just talking bullying. I've dealt with very traumatic things in my life, and I'm sure many other people, if not every other person listening and out there, has dealt with their own version of trauma during their lifetime, right? And so I've dealt with way more trauma than I think anyone should ever have to deal with. And I really, there's actually a scene in my book that actually talks about this exact topic, which is at the end of the day, you have to be okay with who you are. You have to be okay with where you are. You have to be okay with what your trajectory looks like. And you have to be willing to overcome and move forward, and not just stay stuck in that moment of trauma. That is the way past. That is the resilience move, right? And so I have come to terms with my story. I have come to terms with where I was at and where I'm currently at and where I'm going. That took years. That was not an overnight process. I had to really dig deep and figure out who I am, what I'm all about, why I'm doing this, all this stuff. But the other thing is, writing the book itself unlocked something for me that I didn't even know was there. I knew that I've always had this imagination. I've always had this desire to tell stories, and I get really dramatic and excited about the stories that I'm telling. My wife always says at a party, she'll be like, you tell it, you tell better. Right. And and I get all into it. But one of the things I didn't realize was, this is actually a calling on my life, is writing these stories. And I'm 38. I'm almost 39. Like, I didn't realize it until I'm in almost my 40s. So it also helped me identify that it's never too late to start with your passions, whatever those might be. I think at some point in time along the way, I thought, yeah, it'd be really cool to write a book, but I'm also almost 30. Like, I probably shouldn't. Right. I'm sure that came up at some point in time, because reflecting back, I know that happened. Right. And after that leadership conference, it really propelled me to drive forward and to really own that I'm an author, and I can do this, and I can create something that I would love, which I'm hoping other people would love too. So
I like that you just said that I'm an author, because it's hard to really own that. right? When you write a story and then you become this best-selling author and you're just like, oh my goodness, I'm an author. It's like looking in the mirror and saying, I love myself, right? It's like, oh my goodness, I've done it. I did it. You know, where there's lots of people that say, I want to write a book. I want to do this. I want to do that. But they never do it. They just talk. But you actually talked and did the walk and you became the author. So, you know, that's what I really love. I love having guests that are the walkers and the talkers, because you guys are giving my listeners examples and encouragement and hope that they too can do it at any age. You know, I writing a book is not easy.
No.
I've written some and I'm just like, oh my goodness. And you have so much that you don't understand, right? Like when you put a book out, people see the cover, they see the book, they see the awards, but they don't see the work that's put into it. All the edits, all the revising of, chapters and characters. And you might start off with a character being this way, but then it ends up being that way. And then you're just like, but that's not the way I wanted it when I first wrote it. But then people work with you and they say, no, this characteristic goes better with this character than it does with this character, right? So did that happen in your book? And I'm going to pull up your book so all the people can see the incredible book that we're talking about tonight. We did a little teaser at the beginning, so you got to go back and you got to watch the beginning of the show if you want to see the teaser. But tell us about the cover and that. And I love that you have your seal on the book, because I think more authors should do that when they get the seal.
Yeah. So, and again, that was advice from I did a hybrid model. So they did the editing, they helped me with the artwork, and they helped me with the fonts and all these things and helped me put it on Amazon. I own all the royalties, but once, I think there's a certain number you have to get of #1 bestseller from Amazon before they give you that sticker. And once they did, they're like, we got it approved, let's put it on your cover. I said, great, let's do it. Right. So I did allow my team that I hired and brought in help me with the things that I would never have thought of, for sure. So you asked about the cover specifically. First of all, I love my cover. I'm so thrilled with my cover. And there is so much, I'll call it symbolism. I'm not going to drop Easter eggs here, but there are so many Easter eggs.
I love Easter eggs. They're good for you.
Well, I will tell you this. So I will go with the title for a second. Luck Curse, right? So Timaeus actually unlocks a power called Minor Luck. He's my main character. And the reason really that he unlocked Minor Luck is because I wanted to figure out, how do I turn resilience into a power, right? And so basically, for all intents and purposes, it's bad luck is what he unlocks, right? And he sees it as bad luck. He doesn't see it as anything that ever actually catapults him forward. But he also deals with this weird dilemma for himself. He unlocks this power. His mentor coaches him not to reveal that he unlocked this power, which means he's destined to a life of servitude if he doesn't reveal it, because revealing it would increase his standing. So those without powers, non-Crees, are at the bottom of the totem pole, right? If he reveals it, he's no longer at the bottom of the totem pole. But his mentor explains that this power is one that it's kind of got a yin and yang to it. So it's not one that society can easily control. Therefore, you need to keep it hidden. So there are so many things with the black clover, bad luck, keep it hidden, that kind of stuff. I was going to give you another hint, but I'll leave it to you.
I can get them out of my guests, guys. Trust me, I can get those Easter eggs for you. But you got to go get the book. He can give me the Easter eggs after we're done the live.
That's right.
But Evan,
there are people that don't want Easter eggs, or they don't want.
No, because then they're like, right? You just took all the fun out of the book. So you can tell me after the show.
Okay. Yeah.
So Evan, what do you want the readers to take away from it? I seen that comment here. It's right here from. She's a returning listener, and she said, "What message do you want readers to take?"
Yeah. At the end of the day, know yourself, know your story, and know that you have a pathway through. Resilience is key, right? And don't stay stuck in the trauma. And that's easy to say, but if you knew my full story, you would understand how powerful that is, right? Don't stay stuck. Allow yourself the space to heal, but allow yourself the space to move forward past it and through it, what that trauma might be for you.
Absolutely. Well, we have a comment here, Evan, and it says, Evan's story is giving me chills, so motivating. This is why we do storytelling, guys. This is why we bring strong tea to the table, because we want to give you the chills and we want you to see that life, you know, you can turn it around. You can give hope to others. We have a question here for you, Evan, and it's from Real Charlotte. It's, how do you balance being an author and a parent daily?
Man, what a great question. So first of all, the reason this all came to be was I was at a leadership conference unrelated to the world of authorship altogether. And the keynote from stage got up on stage and said, I'm going to do something different. I want everybody to write down on their piece of paper something that scares them and something that excites them that they would like to accomplish in 2024. This was at the very end of 2023. And so I write my book, right? Yeah, woohoo, that's my goal, right? Well, he then says, everyone's got something on their piece of paper, yes? And I say, yeah, you know, well, I'll raise their hands. And he points right at me and goes, I'm sitting in the front row because I'd like to be a good student. And he goes, come up on stage. And I was like, oh, crap. Like, I was not expecting that. Like, I don't have a problem speaking from stage, but I was not expecting to be called out on my goal to write a book in a year. Like, that was not my thought that was happening, right? So I ended up getting on stage. His whole presentation was grilling me on my book, why I wanted to write a book, what inspired me, all these things, right? I get off stage and my associate says, you know what this means, right? And I said, what? He said, you can't show up next year to the same event without a book. I was like, dang it, you're right. 400 of my peers, top professionals in the industry that I'm in, I have a background in insurance. And so I was like, dang, okay, I've said it, I've put it out into the ether, now I have to do it. Well, I got a writing coach pretty quickly after that. And he actually explained, like, well, just so you know, and these are you don't know the things you don't know, you don't need a book by then October. You need a book by June. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? He goes, you still go through the editing process, and that takes months. And I was like, oh, dang. So I kind of reverse engineered it. Okay, how many words would I need? I had a goal initially to do more than 97,000 words, because that was the first Harry Potter book, which was where I pulled a lot of my own inspirations from as a kid. And so I ended up at about 125,000 words on that first manuscript. But going back to the question, sorry, that was a long-winded way to answer your question. What I had to do was go, okay, where can I squeeze in time to actually write this book? And my kids are all young, so they all had at the time a bedtime of about 7:30, sometimes 8. Okay, so I work my full day, then I would come home and do my duties as dad. I also am the cook in my family, so I wouldn't say I'm a chef. I'm just a cook, right? But so I do the meals, right? So I come home, I feed my kids, I play, do all those things, and then they go to bed. Then was my time to carve out, because my wife would pretty much fall asleep pretty quickly after that. And so I would sit down from about 8 o'clock till about 10 or 11, sometimes 12, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would just write. And so it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. I do have a strange ability to be able to just compartmentalize, like, I'm working on this right now. Like, so, and extreme focus. My wife is like, you have ADHD, like, for sure. There's no question. And she's probably right. I've just never been diagnosed. So, so that was how I was able to do that in such a short period of time. And there were days I didn't feel like it. I was like, I don't want to. Like, don't get it wrong. Like, I had so much passion for this.
Daddy's doing a tantrum. Daddy doesn't want to write.
I don't want it. Right? So, but I just reminded myself, no, I have a goal I'm trying to hit. I've already pronounced it to everybody. And so I need to just sit down and write a little bit. And what I often would find is when I would sit down and do that and just take the steps to start writing, the creative juices would start flowing. Sometimes I just couldn't even stop myself. I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, I know it. There's one scene specifically that I have in my book, and I think I wrote like 15,000 words that night because I was just like, yeah. so I'm pretty sure that was the night I stayed up till like 4 o'clock in the morning, and my wife's like, why are you still up? Like,
you don't understand. I got
it. Get it. It's in my head. I got to get it out. Right. So Hopefully
Yeah, unless you're a writer, you don't get it. Like when it hits, right? And I want to talk to you about the dream journals because we don't talk about that a lot. A lot of writers do have these dream journals beside their bed because they want to remember what they're dreaming because that's how characters are built. That's how lands are built. When did you start having a dream journal?
Yeah, so I actually, gosh, it must have been, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. And I just remember, I don't even know what prompted me to do it, but I just remember, I think it might have been my wife actually that prompted me to do it because I'd wake up and be like, man, I had such a cool dream. And I dream like a movie. Like I see it like a movie, right? And she's like, what was it about? And I was like, I don't remember.
I can't remember.
It was really cool. It was awesome. And she's like, oh, tell me. And I was like, it's gone.
I lost it. It's all gone.
I think she was the one that was like, maybe you should start keeping a dream journal because, like, you know, if it really is as vivid, because she was explaining to me, she doesn't dream that way. She doesn't dream like a movie. Like, it's not like she remembers dreams and all this stuff. So she's like, maybe you should start keeping a dream journal. You never know. And that was just kind of an afterthought. And I was like, maybe I should. So I've only done it a couple of times when I have these massively vivid dreams. Like I can remember it like a movie. I wake up, I actually speak to text it into my notes, right? And I go, you know, I just speak as much as I can in 30 seconds before I forget it. And then it's usually gone. It's like poof, gone, right? So you know, there's a limited space of time after I wake up. So
30 seconds, that's the max.
30 seconds, that's a max, yeah. Get everything down within 29 seconds.
I really love this comment. And this is more than a show. It's a life lesson. That's right. That's what it is. We serve real life tea here. We don't serve a beverage. We serve some real life stuff and some real journeys. And I always love going down the rabbit holes with my guests because I never know where they're going to go with it, right? And what's going to come to the table and what we can give you listeners out there that you might have not ever thought about, like dream journals. You know, you're the first guest that I've talked about, I think, with dream journals. If not, I've had one or two, but I think you're the first one, Evan. So thanks for bringing that to the table. We have a question here from Jason. Great insight. What advice would you give to young writers? Yeah,
so I'm going to give the same advice that was given to me because it worked really well for me, but it's not my initial advice. So my writing coach, he actually goes by the pen name of D.D. Black. He writes in the world of mystery. And I do not write in the world of mystery. I write in the world of young and adult, but he actually had written about 17, 18 books when I engaged with him. He's local to me. So I started by taking a class by him and then moving forward from there, asking questions and stuff. First piece of advice is the first draft is probably going to be crap. It's probably not going to go well and it's okay. Like, don't edit as you go. Let the editor do that on the back end. That was huge advice to me because there were times when I was like, oh, it's not perfect. It's not exactly what I want. Like there's these things that I want to tweak but then you can get stuck really quickly in that mode. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to write it and I'll edit on the back end. So that was huge. The other thing is, and he gave me this advice pretty early on. I remember I was stuck at one point. It was very early and I was 3 or 4 chapters into my book and I was stuck. And what I was stuck on was, I wanted my story to take place on a campus type environment, much like Hogwarts, right? Like that's what I wanted. However, I assumed that if I did that, somebody would be like, you did like Harry Potter. They're on campus, just like Harry Potter. Well, yeah. But what he told me is everything that's ever been done, like in that capacity, right, has already been done. There are great books out there of kids commuting to school, and there are great books out there of kids living on campus. It's not like that's a new idea. You can't come up with something really in between. Like that's it. Those are the two, right? Like, or they don't school or they homeschool, right? Like, but those are like the couple options that exist. There are great books out there with all of those components. So do what's right for your book, and don't worry about like, oh, somehow that idea exists in the world. Don't plagiarize. Certainly don't do that. He's like, don't do that. That's a bad idea. And no, I won't do that. But it's okay if your students live on campus. That's already been done. Like, that's not a surprise to people. I said, okay. So that was really helpful because I actually had written the first half of my manuscript with him commuting and I just didn't like it. by the way, commuting scenes from my perspective are boring. Like they are not fun at all. Right? Like nobody wants to talk about taking a trip to school. Like
that's like a bad dream.
a bad dream. And so I really wanted them to live on campus. And so he gave me basically the permission to like, you can do that. If that's what's right for your story, then do that. Right. So that was a huge piece of advice that I would give to other future authors. And the last piece of advice he gave me, which I think is really valuable to young writers who want to write as well, is if there is a story that exists in your head but does not exist in the world, like a book, then maybe you're the one that is meant to write it.
That is a good tool and tip, because there are so many different things in everyone's head that people, until you write it, you don't understand it, right? You got to put the book out there. I really love when young writers tune into Teatime and, they want to know, how do I better myself? How do I get the skills? How do I find a publisher? How do I find an editor? All of those things will fall into place when you figure out how you want your book and that done as well. Evan, were you directed to publishers or editors or anything like that? Or did you do the research yourself?
I did the research myself. Traditional publishing, indie publishing, like there's really three options out there in the marketplace: traditional publishing, indie publishing, and hybrid publishing. Those are kind of the three options. And so I did a bunch of research into a bunch of different companies, and really I ended up getting a referral from somebody who gave me another referral, was how it actually worked. I followed the referral train. That's what you do in the world of insurance too, right? And so finally I landed at the one that was the hybrid model that I use, called Happy Self-Publishing. And they helped me. I had to pay a one-time fee for all the different things I wanted. I was like, marketing package, yes, please, I want that. Bestseller list, yes, please, I want that, right? Like, so I ended up paying a decent chunk of money because I wanted all these things. I said, editing, but if you're going to give me editing, I'm a new author. I want content editing. I don't just want where the periods are missed and the commas, and I want somebody to help me through this journey, right? And so there was a lot of back and forth that I did with my hybrid publisher, but at the end of the day, I did a bunch of research, and I was like, what I found for me was traditional publishing is a much harder route than probably I was ready for, right? And I ended up getting referred a couple places, down the line to a hybrid publisher, and I knew I didn't want to do it on my own. I needed help. So that's where I ended up landing with all of that.
Well, it was your first book, right? You need help.
My first book, my debut novel.
Well, some authors out there, they write their book on their own and they do everything on their own. But then they realize once it comes to marketing the book, it's harder after the book is written to get it out there and get the story, because then you got to tell the story, right? You got to get the readers to understand the story, why they want to buy that book, what's different about your story. So you got to really know the story. You can't just write and put words on a piece of paper and just say, well, you know what, I wrote a book, boom, done. You got to be able to know the insides and out of that book. You got to know, when you get to maybe chapter 7, you're really going to want to have a good cup of tea or a good glass of wine. Like, you don't know where you're going, right? Like you just never know, right? So you want to prepare the reader and the buyer for that as well. So Evan, we have a question here for you that just came in, and it says, how long did it take you to turn your personal experiences into this powerful story?
Well, I wrote the book in less than a year. So the technical answer is less than a year. But I do remember that when I was writing it, so I have different characters, and each character has, I think one of the things I tried to do very well in my book, because I appreciate that as a reader, and I was always a reader first, was I want the character interactions to be strong. I want it to feel real. I don't want it to feel like this character just showed up and then magically they're friends. Like, no, like there was struggle, there was fears, there was, can I trust this person? Like, I wanted that to feel real. And so I focused a lot in my book on those characters coming together kind of almost as a friendship unit, even though they came from different backgrounds and it wasn't necessarily socially acceptable and all these things, right? So, but yeah, so technically it took me a year, or I'll call it about 7 months, but I remember there were moments where I was like, how can I make this more powerful? How can I make this more real? How can I elevate this character to a higher place? And I would, for those instances, always tap on my own personal experiences. Like I said, I've dealt with my own personal traumas. So I would tap into those and go, what was I feeling in those moments? But again, I couldn't have done that without counseling, right? Like it allowed me to kind of reflect back and now grab those emotions that I experienced during that period of time or during that trauma and bring them into my characters and make them feel real. So yes, it took me total 7 months, but it was definitely a process and a journey, and it wasn't just certainly didn't happen overnight, and certainly wasn't like after 7 months I just had a final product. I had to go back and forth to the scenes and really try to bring in some of that emotion. Any scenes that didn't do that, my editor was like, "Yeah, you're gonna get rid of that 15,000. Get rid of the whole chapter." She did that. My editor at one point was like, "Yeah, that whole chapter can go." And I was like, "The whole chapter? What do you mean the whole chapter can go?" She's like, "It doesn't add to your story. It's just there. It's just fluff. Just get rid of it." And I was like, "Oh." As an author, you get attached to the things you write, even if it's
not on that chapter. Getting attached to characters. Is there going to be a sequel to this book? Like, are we going to know more about these characters?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. 1,000%. I have next 2 books mapped out in my head, right? So we've got 2 and 3 for sure. I actually think this is going to be about a 6 or 7 book series because I know where I'm trying to go with it. I know what I'm trying to accomplish with it long term, right? So, and I know I can't do that after 3 books, right? So because I've already got the next 2 mapped out ahead. So, but I will say this because I know I get this question at every show I go to. "Oh, bummer, it's a series. I'll wait till you're done writing all series." No, please don't. I made the book stands alone on its own, much like how Harry Potter finalizes at the end of Harry Potter. There's going to be a next one, but you also are done with that book. So.
And we had a little glitch there. So if you just want to repeat it really quickly, like Evan, because I was like you were frozen in time there. It almost goes with your story here. So if you just want to repeat a little bit about that, Evan.
Okay. All right. I'll repeat it. So yes, there is a series. There is a series. This book is a standalone, however, which means it can stand alone on its own, but I heavily hint that there's going to be a series out of this. So, and Harry Potter did the same thing where each book finalized at the end of the book. I did the same kind of thing in my book because I don't personally like cliffhangers myself, right? I've read them and then I have to wait 3 years for the next one. So I try to do that in my book too.
Well, we had a question that came in that I missed, and I want to get it out there. And it says, this message about identity is something everyone needs to hear. I'm guessing that sharing your identity and being honest and authentic with yourself, Evan, is what this question is based on. So I just seen that one. So I'm really sorry. So that might have been at the beginning of the show. So we were talking about a lot of things at the beginning of the show. So if you just want to try and answer that one, Evan.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand who you are as a person, right? And how do you identify in the world? I think that's important for everybody to figure out for themselves. And so individual identity is really important in my book because there's so many ways in my book that I bring about the idea of identity. And a lot of it comes down to which powers unlock, which bloodlines you come from, like those kinds of things. I call them bloodlines, right? For that power hierarchy. And who can you interact with? Who can you relate to? Why are you limited to relating to these people just because society says so? Right. And so that is definitely incorporated throughout the vein of my entire series is that idea of identity. I mean, this girl behind me, I mean, you can't see it on the little one, but on the big screen, she deals with her own version of identity. She has power. And her parents outcast her, like completely, like didn't want anything to do with her after that she unlocked a power that wasn't of the prestige bloodline that she's from, right? So how do you deal with that kind of identity crisis, right? So yes, answering his question, it is really important that we individually know ourselves, and we know how to move ourselves forward, and we know how to identify, like, this is who I want to be in the world. I think that's extremely important. So
Evan, you said that you see a 6 or 7 series happening with this book, right? Mm-hmm. So in that 6 and 7 series, do you see your children being part of those books?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, as far as like characters, certainly. I know that I did bring in certain aspects when I wrote this first book of like my own siblings, right? I have several siblings myself. So there were scenes where I was like, oh, that's my brother, like through and through. So I definitely see right now my 7-year-old and my 4-year-old might be a little young, but at the end of the day, they have their own personalities. They have their own world that they live in and that they focus out of, right? So I definitely see it being a part of it. But remember, the whole hierarchy being passed through genetics over time actually came from my daughter already. So I definitely see that happening. Of course, in the next book, I might have to put in a character who is just completely defiant and always says no to everything, because that's what my 4-year-old currently does. So
you got the no stage. Wait till you get to the Y stage.
Oh no, she does both.
Why?
She does both. Yeah. The other day, sorry, I was a little facetious with my daughter because she goes, well, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? And I said, well, that's because, we were talking about like why we see things the way we see things. I gave her a very technical answer. And I said, well, technically, your eyes take a snapshot of it and inverts it upside down or something and pushes it to your brain, and then it right sizes it up. And then she's like, huh?
I just answered.
My wife was like, yeah, that wasn't confusing at all.
So Evan, what legacy are you creating for your children? Do you feel that your storytelling is part of the legacy for them?
Absolutely. So first of all, I wanted, it was really important to me. One of the reasons I focused on young adult fantasy, at least for my first series, is when my kids become of age, they're 7 right now, so he's a little young. I want him to be able to pick up my book, enjoy the book, be proud of the book, and not be worried about what he read in the book. Right. And so there's zero spice to my book. I know a lot of people might be like, oh man, no, it's young adult. It's not meant to have that. There's no language, there's no spice, but there are real life things that they deal with that everybody deals with regardless of age. And so I want from my kids, just the fact that I wrote a book, and I technically always wanted to, I just never really put pen to paper. You can do anything you set your mind to. And I'll give it some, I'll give it the same kind of credence that my father always gave it, which was within reason, right? If you are 4'0" and you want to play in the NBA, that might be more of a challenge than if you were 7 foot, right? But you can do anything you set your mind to, but you are going to have to work and put in effort and energy towards anything that you think is of value in your life. And I think that's the lesson they get from just seeing their dad write a book. It's really cool right now interacting with my son in that way. I'll come home from an event. He'll be like, how'd you do? This last weekend was at an event, and it was a slower event, but I sold 31 books. And he goes, wow, that's amazing. You sold 31 books. Yes, I did. Right. And but he's getting inspired. He's getting excited about not just my books, but like seeing me accomplish what I've always wanted to accomplish. And I want my children to know that they have that in them too. They can do that too, regardless of what it is they choose to do.
Absolutely. So Evan, what is your final message for all the listeners out there tonight?
Yeah. So final message would be I've said it throughout this whole thing, but be true to yourself. Figure out for yourself what you want in your life, what you want to accomplish, where you want to go, who you want to be with from a relationship, from a friendship standpoint, right? What you're willing to tolerate like the bullying thing. I just wasn't going to feed into it after learning the lessons that I needed to learn anymore. Right. And so, who are you as a person? And the biggest message I think I have is don't live in the trauma. The trauma happens to all of us. It happens, but don't let that be the ending of your story.
That's powerful. So really, thank you, Evan, for coming and sharing your story tonight with the listeners and sharing your book and all of that good stuff. I really, truly, the wormholes going on, and we get that, StreamYard, sometimes they send these little black wormholes after Miss Liz because they're like, Miss Liz, that's enough, get off. Well, you know what, Miss Liz is going to get off in a few seconds. But thank you so much, Evan, for tuning in and joining me tonight and sharing your book, sharing your life story with us as well, and opening up a good conversation for my listeners out there. Thank you to the listeners who joined and brought your questions. I can't do this without you, all of you guys. So thank you. Thank you to the guests. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to the supporters. We're just going to do a fast recap of what tonight's tea time was, and I'll see everybody on Thursday, and we'll do it all over again. What an inspiring and energizing conversation. Evan, thank you for sharing your journey, one that reminds us that resilience is not just something we talk about. It's something we build moment by moment, choice by choice. Tonight, we were reminded that the battles we face in real life often shape the stories we tell. And those stories can become a source of strength, not only for ourselves, but for others walking in similar paths. Your work shows us that courage doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like showing up, staying committed, and finishing what you started, even when it's hard. Here is something to carry with you after this tea time. What challenge in your life could become the very story that helps someone else keep going? Because sometimes the struggle you're in is shaping the strength you're meant to share. Until our next cup, keep sharing, keep going, keep creating, and keep choosing resilience no matter the odds. And I'll see everybody on Thursday. We'll do this all over again.